like the risk you took going from a career where there was a sense of security to an unorthodox career of voice acting. So how did you feel when you sort of was making this transition, and how did your wife feel? Like, how was that dynamic?
Well, obviously I give credit to the Lord for
Yes, sir.
everything, but the things that he used in that process were my wife's number one.
Mm.
Like she gave me permission to strike out on my own. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So I know guys that if they had the dream that I had,
Yes, sir.
or maybe a female and her husband or whatever, and they're like, no, you're going to stay in that job because we got a house to pay for and
Hmm.
whatever, a vacation and a boat and all this stuff.
Yes, sir.
And my wife said, good, do it.
Wow.
And I'm very thankful for that. I think you need that um, uh, support.
Yes, sir.
You need that support, whether a single person or what have you. You need support from somebody saying, look, I don't know anything about that, but you ought to do it because
Mm.
you would. I could see you being good at that. You just kind of. I think we all need a cheerleader,
Hmm.
um,
Yes, sir.
and and that's what my wife was for me, and still is. But that was the initial thing. Like, no, leave the the security of this job. And I'd been talking to her about the idea of it, and she said, "Yeah, that place is killing you. You're
Hmm.
not as creative and things like that. I can just see it sort of just sucking the life out of you. And I
Wow.
appreciate you working so hard, but I would rather have you around here making less money and um and just kind of be less stressed out all the time."
Wow.
And so she was in my corner. And then one day I was talking to a guy at work. He was one of the maintenance guys, and he was a very rural, like a redneck. Like even I could barely understand him.
Really?
But I
Wow.
remember his words were uh, basically, sometimes you just have to take the plunge.
Mm.
They're always going to pay you enough to keep you coming back the next day,
Mm.
just enough. And I was like, man, that is. I'm gonna go think on that. That's some heavy wisdom right there.
Mm.
And I went
Mm.
home and I was praying about it, and then something happened at work where my boss, who had been a really good boss, who got a bad review, like a performance review, started becoming a lot more political.
Mm.
So that kind of thing. And I kind of started noticing how his management style changed for the worse, sort of a
Wow.
lookout for himself instead of lookout for the everyone on his team.
Yes, sir.
And something kind of blew up at work one day, and I told my wife, like, I think it's time to quit. And she was
Wow.
traveling at the time, and she said, "Great, put in your notice." And like that was the scary part for me, was saying, "Hey, I think we should do this." So the scary part was getting her blessing, like, because I'm not going to do that without
Oh, for sure.
getting her support and getting her, you
That's
know,
why. That's wisdom, bro. Yeah.
right, her analysis on it. Because sometimes,
Yeah.
if you got a good spouse, they're going to see some things that you're not seeing. That kind of thing.
Mm.
Anyway, I got her blessing. The Lord, was definitely in it the entire time. And then
Yeah.
it was scary, but also in an exhilarating way, like riding a roller coaster. Not like scary, this is terrible, I'm gonna die, but scary, adrenaline's rushing, and isn't this wonderful? I'm motivated on a Monday morning to pop out of bed and start sending some marketing emails and get this. You know,
Wow.
I'm. It's up to me
Yeah.
to look to the Lord for wisdom and guidance
Mm.
and prosperity. I think the Lord's got to give us our daily bread. If the Lord's not there, then we're going to be spinning our wheels. But it kind of it's done wonders for my prayer life.
Wow. Oh, I'm
Like, Lord,
sure.
yeah, I mean, just like you mentioned, I don't have a paycheck that comes in every of a certain amount every so off
Two
every 2 weeks
weeks
or whatever.
or yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm gonna have to go out and do the work and ask God to bless the effort.
Mm.
You know, like
And that's the interesting thing is like, the whole being self-employed and entrepreneurship, all that things sound glamorous, but man, there's there may be some months where you don't get paid, or you know what I mean, it's
yeah,
some parts of it that's not as glamorous, but it's one of those things. It's like, when we work at a 9 to 5, it's like, we're getting paid for our time essentially,
yep,
what I mean? But it's like when you're self-employed, you're working for yourself. No, you have something that you offer, that people are, so it's like being paid for your gifts and your talents as opposed to being paid for your time, you know what I mean?
right.
And I guess it's an element of being paid for your time as well, but it's not all glamorous, you know what I mean? It's like, there's like some white knuckling and, just grinding and calling, as you mentioned, and sending your stuff out and trying to get yourself out there. And
Yep.
yeah, wow, wow, wow. Now, how did when you talk to your wife about this and taking this risk, and her saying go for it, like how did that make you feel? Like,
Well, it made me feel like I couldn't fail.
mm,
So like technically, even if I did fail, like look,
mm,
we're not making enough money. You know, a few months down the road, and I think I need to get back into it. I feel like she would have said, I need to go back to the factory. I think she would have said, all right, we
wow,
tried it. I would rather live with disappointment than regret.
yes
You
sir,
know, I would rather be 30 something and say, well, I tried it. I gave it a good year and it didn't work out for me. So
mm,
I'm back. I'm back, you know, trying to make some money, but that dream's not dead. I'll be back at it. But you know what I'm saying?
yes sir,
Then be, 65, you're about to retire and I wonder what would have happened if
mm,
my life would be different if I would have said, you know what, I'm going to try to do this thing 30 years ago,
mm,
you know, because your life may look a lot different for the better if you
yeah,
go on
yeah,
and say, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I think that goes for anyone. But if you know the
for sure,
Lord, you got somebody that he's really something. He can do
yes he
anything,
is,
and he
yeah,
tends to bless effort. When you, if you sit there and just say, Lord, I wish I could work for myself, and you never do anything, take any steps.
yes sir,
I don't know that he's gonna bless that. I mean, he could if he wanted to, but I think of myself as a father. If my kid says, Dad, I want to be good at baseball. I want to play baseball. Like, okay, great. Well, if that same kid's out there throwing the ball against the wall and catching it and like tossing the ball up himself and hitting the ball, I'm going to be more likely to buy him a pair of cleats or a new glove when I see him out there
yes.
working. And
And you don't have to beg him to go. You know what I mean? It's like
right, right.
I see a lot of, I see a lot of young people like that. Like, they want to go to the NFL, they want to do this, but then you see their work ethic. You like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
man, it's gonna take more work than that. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It takes work and,
right.
and being intentional for sure.
I was reading this morning where it said in the book of Exodus when it says the children of Israel are at the Red Sea, and it said God told Moses, raise your hand over the water.
Mm.
Moses raised his hand out, put his rod out over the water, and then it said, and the Lord caused the water to turn back.
Yes, sir.
So it's like Moses was doing something, but Moses didn't do it. God did it.
Yes, sir.
And the Levites, when they crossed back into the promised land with Joshua, it said the Levites had the Ark of the Covenant on their shoulders, and the the Lord says, cross that river.
Mm.
And they're probably thinking, well, I mean, you've divided a sea. Couldn't you maybe dam up this river so we could cross it? This is Jordan River. God didn't dam up that river until all their feet were in the water. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like
Yes,
he
sir.
he let those guys get wet, and when he saw their action, he blessed it, and that's when
Wow.
he divided or not divided the Jordan. I suppose he stopped the Jordan River and they crossed. I think
Man,
God
that's
likes to
powerful.
see effort. on our part,
He does.
and he
I,
tends to bless it.
the Lord has convicted me at times. It's like, because I think that's a powerful, that's a powerful word, because it's like oftentimes we take credit for things that God is doing. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
he's doing this. You know what I mean? It's like, and it reminds me of a quote by Jackie Hill Perry. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, poet,
I've heard of her. Yeah.
rapper, but she was talking about work. And she said, work has a way of disordering our affections and meddling with our mind. So this concept of work, it's like, we're working, we're grinding, we're grinding. She said, it has a way of disordering our affections and meddling with our mind. So much so that we begin to think we made the soil that we tilled, found the seed that we planted, created the water we used, and therefore growth we called good is to our glory. We have a tendency, and I think, that's part of our sinful nature. It's like we're trying to get all of the glory for things that we've accomplished, but we don't recognize God's hand in that and what he is doing. So it's acknowledging like, man, yeah, I was able to accomplish this thing, but it was by the grace of God. You know what I mean? It was his
Amen.
doing.
Yep.
David defeated Goliath, yes, but it was because of the Lord. Like, you know what I mean? It's like we cannot miss that. Like his
Right.
hand in our lives and what he is doing. And we too often take credit for something that God is doing.
I'm out front running all day.